Yo, YouTube, what's up? I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about the differences in targeting largemouth bass versus spotted bass. Largemouth and spotted bass, that's basically what I've spent most of my fishing life chasing, are the two. And I've really probably spent more time chasing the largemouth, but most of the lakes in my region have really been inundated with spotted bass recently. And I put a lot of time in the last 2 or 3 years learning spotted bass behavior and trying to just better myself on the offshore techniques. And there's definitely a distinct difference in how you target spotted bass versus how you would target largemouth bass. And I'm gonna kind of walk you through my spin on the best ways to attack the two, because you definitely can target one or the other. Let's just start off with largemouth bass. Of course, one of the biggest things you need to realize right off the bat is the two species, they act totally differently. They like totally different habitat. They like totally different weather, in my opinion. So you can really gauge how you want to fish for those bass very specifically. And if I'm targeting largemouth bass, I'm almost always going to be on the bank. Whether that means creek fishing, main lake fishing, during the herring spawn, I'm going to be close. I'm going to be shallow. Most of the time, I'm probably going to be 10 foot or less when I'm fishing for largemouth bass. And one of the best ways that you can target a largemouth bass is get where they live. First of all, a largemouth is a loner bass. They are more predatorial. They like to be a little bit more isolated, so that's going to put you in territory like a creek, a pocket, anywhere there's a little more stained water. That's going to help you out. They're not so much sight feeders. They're more predatorial. They like to kind of hide, get behind things, get in a blow down, get in the shade line of a dock, and attack their prey. That's how they feed. They're not quite as fast as spotted bass. So that's how they survive, is in darker water. They survive in a little bit thicker habitat. So if you got laydowns, especially if you've got anywhere there's grass, little shallower water, darker water, shade lines, anywhere they can get and hide and feel real secure and safe, that's where you're going to find a largemouth bass. So your creeks, laydowns, docks, any kind of inconsistencies on the bank, grass, that's where you're going to find your largemouth bass. You're going to choose your baits accordingly. If you're going to fish for largemouth bass and you're going to be back in the creeks, if you're fishing laydowns, if you're fishing rocks, if you're fishing stained water, obviously that's going to eliminate some of the baits that you're going to use. If you're fishing stained water, some of the best baits you're going to use are going to be crankbaits, shallow diving crankbaits, jigs, chatterbaits, spinner baits. Here's a chatterbait that I just took off a rod that I had here recently. But those are the baits that you're going to use to catch largemouth with most of the time. Doesn't mean you won't catch them on other things. Doesn't mean you won't catch fish deep, largemouth bass deep. But their primary habitat and where they thrive the best, shallow, darker habitat where they can really hide, feel comfortable, and attack their prey and catch them off guard. So that's the way I would tell you to target largemouth bass on your fishery if you had to choose between the two. Now, as I mentioned, I've been fishing for spotted bass a lot the last 2 or 3 years, just simply because the populations of spotted bass where I live are really starting to flourish, and we're getting some really, really big spotted bass as well. And how I like to target spotted bass is definitely always going to be open water, somewhere in close proximity to deep water, even if I'm fishing shallow in the springtime. But it's almost always going to be main lake oriented. Even if it's a pocket or if it's shallow water, it's going to be a main lake pocket, one that's directly off the main lake channel. I'm going to fish deeper water. I'm going to fish smaller baits most of the time. That's the way I like to fish for spotted bass. Humps, points, shoals, deep brush piles. I'm going to look for the clearest water on a particular lake. And spotted bass are typically tend to be more sight oriented. I call them the gangsters of the main lake. They don't need any structure to ambush their prey. They simply can swim around in just open water. They're fast swimmers, very alert of their surroundings, and they can chase down and corral. They like to travel in schools and packs, 15, 20 fish, 30 fish, and they can corral their bait, the threadfin shad, blueback herring. Of course, they still like to eat crawdad, but they travel by numbers, and that's how they attack their prey. The threadfin shad, the blueback herring, they'll get a couple of them in a group, and they'll just get them corralled around a point or hump or something like that, or they can really just attack them at will, because they're fast swimmers. They're very agile. They're built. You can tell by the way the fish is built that they're really strong, fast swimmers. They're just built totally differently. They're wired totally differently. As I said, they're sight feeders, which clear water is always going to lend to help you out. Always going to fish deeper. I'm always going to fish towards the main lake, or close proximity to deep water or the main lake is always going to be a prime territory. Doesn't mean you won't catch spotted bass off the main lake or in shallow water, but the bulk and the biggest population of spotted bass is always going to be on the main lake, close to proximity to deep water. And that's all the way from pre-spawn through the spawn, post-spawn, summertime. That fact always remains. They're going to be at close proximity to deeper water. You know, baits that I'm always going to use for catching spotted bass: finesse tactics, drop shots, swim baits, finesse swim baits. You know, you guys have seen I fished the 3-inch minnows a ton this year. That's one of my favorite ones. Just a 3-inch swim bait on a jig head, 3/16, 1/8 ounce jig head. In the wintertime, like it is now, I'm going to be fishing jigging spoons. You know, baits that I use that I would typically fish shallow: a jerk bait. They like reaction baits, things that move really fast and then quit, move really fast and quit. That's always a good way to catch spotted bass as well. So a jerk bait, anything that's really brightly colored. The chartreuses are always good. Pinks are always good. Of course, you guys know I like to throw that neon pink from Z-Man Fishing. Any of those bright colors can lend to be good sometimes. You know, spotted bass, they're not as temperamental on cold fronts. They bite really good when it's cold. They bite really good when it's hot, and everything in between, cloudy, sunny. They're not quite as particular like largemouth they are. Actually, I think they probably bite a little bit better when the conditions are a little adverse. So that's how I'm going to target spotted bass. We fish a little deeper, close proximity to deep water, and I'm going to move a little faster, quite honestly, with spotted bass. They're typically a little bit more aggressive. So if I pull up to a place, I'm going to use my electronics a lot, and if I see fish there, if they're going to bite, usually they bite as soon as I pull up. If I don't really spend a lot of time in one place with spotted bass. They're typically very aggressive, and they're going to bite if they're there. So use those couple tips to help you guys target largemouth versus targeting spotted bass. I think you'll catch a lot of fish out there. Just remember to know the difference between the two species. Know that spotted bass like to hang around deeper water. They're sight oriented. Look for clear water. When you want to fish for largemouth, go up there shallow, find the most stained water you can find, and throw your baits accordingly. You're gonna have a lot of fun out there.